To whet our appetite with more details about the event, we're now joined on Zoom by its organizer, Kurt Ackermann. Kurt, a very good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Morning to you, Simpiwe. Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure, Kurt. Now, tell us more about the food dialogues and how it feels to finally be able to host it physically this year.
To be able to connect with people in person is such a pleasure and a joy after our years of pandemic lockdown. And I think it also speaks to the way that we connect with one another through food. It's one thing to talk about a plate of food through a Zoom screen. It's another thing to share a plate of food with people at a table. And that's just what we'll be doing at the Food Dialogues this year.
And I suppose the key thing, as you said, is to connect with each other through food. Now, speak to us about some of the pertinent issues that you aim to highlight at this year's event.
Sure. You know, food touches all of our lives in so many aspects of our society. And so we're going to try to reflect some of that breadth with this year's Food Dialogues. We'll be having, as you said, some expert panel discussions and workshops, really digging deep into some of the issues that make our food system so inequitable and such a problem, but also connecting in ways that are much more kind of day to day for most of us. Most of us don't think about food as a system. We think about hunger or shopping or something delicious. And so we'll be working with chefs who will share their plates of food and talk to us about how that connects to their own histories and experiences, and talking about our identity and breaking bread together. Some walking tours to see the city through a different lens, how food shapes our city, and some visual art as well.
Okay. Now, break down for us, if you can, this year's program for us. How is it looking like?
So we're going to kick off on Mandela Day with a wonderful volunteering experience out at Philippi Village, which is an area serving a vulnerable and under-resourced community on the edge of Philippi. And we'll be helping them do some planting on their 8 hectares of ground that they're committing to food production. We'll then have a half-day mini-conference where we will unpack some of the deeper issues, some issues around some of the meat alternatives that are coming out, lab-cultured meat and vegan meat and those kinds of issues, changes happening in the informal sector, in the food sector. We'll also be looking at the future of food retail through farmers markets and food stockfells and those sorts of things. We'll be doing workshops with members from Masipumalele, Mfuleni, other vulnerable communities that have really been struggling with early childhood nutrition in the first 1,000 days, and sharing some tips and interventions that they've been working on, and those hopefully can benefit people in other communities. On the weekend, we'll be doing some farm-to-fork dining experiences. We've got a theatrical experience with Chef Jane Shuti, who's from Rwanda, who will be sharing an experience with a storyteller around a traditional African hearth. We will carry on the following week with an additional set of workshops, and ending with a bit of a bang with 4 consecutive interactive food dining experiences with a range of chefs, some for kids. We'll be doing some African fermentation with umkomboti and injera, which is fermented teff, and some African flavors and ice creams as well, just to round it off.
Indeed. Let's now talk about the food shopping futures and how it'll be explored at this year's program.
So the food shopping futures is really our deepest dive this year into some of the underlying issues that are shaping our food system. We have massive challenges. You may know that also worldwide the food system is one of the biggest problem sectors with regard to climate. And we'll be looking at not just how we go about shopping. We have a highly consolidated food retail sector. A few large companies control most of the supermarkets and the supply to consumers. But there are some interesting alternatives that have emerged and that are creating a new space for ways that people can access their food. That also includes the informal sector, which has seen some amazing tech disruptions, some interesting companies like Gabo Fresh and others, some alternative digital currencies coming up. So a lot of the innovation on our food system is actually happening in the informal sector. So we'll look at those. And then, we have such a strong meat culture and cattle owning culture in South Africa, and yet there's a lot of pushback with wanting meat alternatives. And so we're going to unpack many of those issues to see what makes sense for us in South Africa, what some of the trends are, and what's going to be on our shelves. People talk about things like insect protein, lab cultured meat, but who gets to decide? And does that really change the nature of our food system, or is it just more corporations coming in, and we still have the same iniquities that we face currently.
And there's also Mandela Day on the 18th of this month. Let's talk about the Mandela Day Volunteering program that will be running as part of this event.
Absolutely. So we've partnered with one of our sponsors, the V&A Waterfront, to bring a large number of people out to Philippi Village. As I said before, they've got 8 hectares of land that they've allocated to food production, and they have a 12-hectare site. So they're quite a sizable resource for the community of Philippi. And we will have volunteers working side by side with community members, planting trees, preparing beds, and helping kickstart some of those efforts for people to grow food for themselves. The challenge there is that, in urban spaces, we can't grow enough food to feed ourselves. So we still need larger rural areas for staple grains and for meat and other things. But we can make a big difference with our nutrition. We can improve our skills. We can improve our environment and biodiversity. And so there's a whole range of ways that this Mandela Day volunteering experience will help people to connect with residents of the Philippi area, but also to make a difference for that community with a legacy. And so we think it's a wonderful way of getting started in the spirit of Madiba, and to showcase what then the rest of the food dialogues will have to offer over the following 2 weeks.
Now, Kurt, take us through the visual arts exhibition where works showing diverse experiences within the food system will be on display.
So we're fortunate in that there are many projects, research projects and other activities that capture moments within our food system, people eating together. Sometimes they're very poignant moments where people are struggling to make ends meet. And a lot of times those are storytelling for the purposes of research or for policy setting, but those images really aren't available to the broader public. And so we've been fortunate to have access to some photographic works, some painted works, some that do have that kind of depth and are more on the lines of almost photojournalism, but some that are a bit more playful and that speak to another side of our relationship to food. And so we've got visual artworks on display that'll be in one of the galleries at the V&A Waterfront, where people can go for free and see these wonderful works.
It sounds very interesting, Kurt. And for those interested in going, how do they go about purchasing tickets?
So tickets are available through the Food Dialogues website, which is at fooddialogues.info, I-N-F-O. And there they can see all of the events. We have actually 27 events happening over the 2 weeks. A number of those events are the daily walking tours that are happening in the city center and at Philippi Village. But there's a range of things, and there's something for everyone. You know, everybody eats, and our engagement with our food system needs to be open for all of us to participate in.
All right. Kurt, lovely chatting to you, man. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Great stuff.
Keep well.
That's the 2022 Food Dialogues organizer, Kurt Ackermann, and we've been speaking to him about their event that's set to take place in different locations around Cape Town from Monday, the 18th of July until the 1st of August.